Today's poll is, where do you have the most trouble with like audition scripts? And I ask this question because it's something that we don't really talk enough about, I guess. Um, because it's it's kind of important. We talk about marketing ourselves all the time, and auditioning it's a form of marketing, right? It's sort of throwing your voice out into the void, maybe not the void, but to a client or two, and seeing what comes back. But then sometimes those clients will say, you're not right for this particular project that you auditioned for. However, I think your voice would be great for something else. So it's a form of marketing, right? Um, sort of like, no, I guess it wouldn't be squirrel. But anyway, um, so far we have about 23 votes. And it looks like the majority of you said you're fighting with finding the proper tone or pace for an audition script. 12% of you are worried about being scammed, and that's totally understandable. 24% of you said, how much do I record of an audition? We could definitely talk about that. And then 24% of you said, you didn't say that. You said technical requests. Also understandable. Um, but understanding the technical requests can sometimes, or notes or any other information that the client has provided to you, can help you determine the proper tone and pace. So understanding and reading through very carefully the technical requests can answer a lot of those questions for you. But we don't always get them. We don't always get, this is our target demographic. This is the tone we're looking for. Who are you as the narrator? Like, who are you supposed to be as the narrator? Or a voice artist, however you want to say it. We don't get that all the time. And sometimes we just get a script and you're meant to sort of just figure it out, right? They'll give you perhaps an age range and you sort of just have to figure out where this is going or who it's going to, what the purpose of the script is, all on your own. And that is where you really need to take the time to do the work in interpretation, to read it to yourself a couple times, perhaps out loud a couple times, and then try to get a good understanding of who you're talking to, who you are, and why you're saying what you're saying. I think in those instances when it's not quite clear and the client hasn't given you any clear direction, you could do one of two things. You could either ask the client, right? If they're shooting for a specific demographic of people, you can ask them these questions, right? Who are you supposed to be as the narrator, and what is the purpose, or how is this being used? You could ask those questions. But sometimes we don't have the ability to just message a client without submitting a complete bid or audition, or we don't have the luxury of asking questions before we audition. So more often than not, you're left to just sort of shoot your shot. So that's what you do. And if you want to, you could even do a couple of takes. If it's a shorter script, perhaps maybe it reads like a commercial, or it's promoting something, selling something, right? Some sort of a call to action. But it feels like it could go one of two different ways in terms of pace or tone. Then do it twice, right? Give them the alternate takes of that script. But in the beginning, at the very start of the recording, make sure that you state, this is take 1 of 2. And then once you get to the second take, the second alternate recording, this is take 2 of 2. If you say that in the beginning of the recording, whomever's listening knows that there is an alternate take, because you have to remember that our clients are only going to listen for the first few seconds to see if you're the voice they're looking for. They're not gonna sit and go, "Oh, this is a 6-minute audition. I have all the time in the world to sit and listen to all 6 minutes of all 200 auditions that I have to listen through," right? It's kind of a big ask. But if you tell them in the beginning, they can at least go, "Okay, well, listen to the first few seconds of the first take and then, skip to the second one," if they wanted to. So, keep that in mind, that they're not listening through the entire audition, just usually the first few seconds, right? In terms of how much do I record, you I think this question I could see this mainly being for perhaps, audiobook auditions, because most of the time when a client gives you an audition for something else, it's usually just a small snippet, right? Because they don't wanna have to listen through 12 minutes of audition, like I said before. So, they'll usually just give you a snippet, but for audiobooks, it could be that the author perhaps doesn't know how to slice out a snippet of the book and they give you an entire chapter. Maybe they provide the entire book, the entire manuscript as part of the audition process or, uploaded. That's what they uploaded was the whole manuscript. And it could be obviously they don't want you to record the entire book, but it could be here, skim it over and see if this is something you're comfortable with, or I just don't know how to slice out a snippet of this book. Either way, it doesn't mean you have to read the entire thing. Same thing with a chapter. Maybe they sent you 10 pages of a chapter. You don't have to narrate the entire thing. I think for audiobooks, auditions of perhaps 2, 3 minutes max is sufficient, right? Just enough for them to get an idea of your narration style, the way that you sound, perhaps the way that you handle character work. And sometimes authors will do that too. They'll give you specific sections of the book to see how you handle that scene, that emotion, right? How you handle different character voices, things of that nature. But it kind of depends on what they give you, and then just use your best interpretation of what it is that they're looking for. But you don't have to read the entire thing. Um, there was something else hanging out on my periphery that I wanted to mention. Maybe it'll come back to me. But of course, as always, if you have questions about anything, even if it doesn't pertain to audition scripts, as we're talking about today, then please feel free to ask in the chat. That's why we get together every week to get some questions answered for you, because as we always say, we don't want you to sit idle and not move forward in this endeavor. So if you have a question of something that's keeping you hung up and it's not audition script related, please put it in the chat. We'll address your question, of course. And I say we because it's not just my opinion, it's everybody in the chat too. This is a community chat. So, what I did want to show you, I wanted to show you a sample script for those of you that perhaps want to practice with voiceover scripts. I guess there are commercial, there's all kinds. But if you go to voices.com, it's one of the casting websites that we go to find work for voiceover contracts. They also have a resources section, and there's a handful of these websites that do this, but there is a resource section that has practice scripts. They do say, and I believe all of them do that provide practice scripts, that you cannot and should not use these practice scripts as demo material. So if you're looking to make a demo, your first demo, and you don't have any copy to record your first demo, don't use practice scripts. Not only is because they tell you not to and that you're not allowed to, but also casting directors, people of that nature have heard these scripts time and time and time again. It's a major red flag to indicate that you have no work under your belt. You're brand new, right? So you don't want to set that impression. If you do need copy for your demo script, I would suggest going to ChatGPT, type in a prompt of how many words. Commercials are generally about a minute long, and there's about 150 words of narration roughly within a minute. So you could tell ChatGPT to write you a script of, let's just say, even 125 words or less of some fictitious business for a commercial read, something like that. And then use that as the bones of your copy. You could even change it up a little bit, change the names, change the wording, whatever you want to do. I mean, easy peasy. I think I just derailed myself. But ChatGPT is a good place to start. But if you're looking for practice scripts, as we were mentioning before about technical requests, pace, tone, if you go to voices.com, and I have it up here, they have tons of practice scripts. And these are just the commercial reads. These are just for radio and TV, but they have tons of these. And this is the very, very top section of the script. The entire script is right there, but this is what we're calling the technical requests, is usually up at the top. And this is where they'll tell you what gender they're looking for. Some will tell you that they're looking for a female voice or a male voice, or either or open to whatever. They'll tell you how long the commercial is, which is a great thing to practice, because if you're on the slower narration side, you had to remember that if this read is supposed to be within 30 seconds or less, and I would always shoot for less than 30 seconds, all of this has to fit within that 30 seconds. So these are great to practice with for that reason alone. But they'll also tell you the target demographic, right? In this case, it's parents with elementary and high school aged kids. And as you know, you're not going to talk to parents in the same tone or way as you would a group of surgeons, perhaps, right? Or a group of real estate agents. You're going to have a different approach to that kind of conversation, right? Who you are as the narrator, you are a tutor, teacher, or an educator, so knowledgeable, right? The vocal direction is tactful, considerate, encouraging, and they'll even tell you what the music could be in the background, which also could help you discover the tone. So if you could think of something calming, smooth, instrumental in the background as you're talking to a group of parents, that'll help you sort of set the tone and pace, right? And then they even go as far as putting in suggested sound effects. So you could really get a good visual of what this commercial is going to look and feel like. And that will really help you to determine the proper tone. So these are great to practice with for that reason. And of course, there are tons of these. So this one is male, 30 seconds. You're talking to Generation X baby boomers. You are a dad, a middle-aged dad, right? And there are tons of these. Let's see. This one's male or female. Target demographic is students and out-of-control credit card owners. That's probably all of us, right? You are the town crier, or like an announcer sort of a voice. Over-the-top air of desperation with timely relief. These are quite fun to practice with. We actually use these in my Platinum group. We have a handful of times, and they're very useful to practice with, especially for the length, right? The amount of time that they have to fit into. So these are great to practice with. But to go back and address a comment I saw just as right before we got started about sort of second guessing yourself. I think that was Glowen I saw. Second guessing yourself when you're recording an audition and then you just scrap it all together because you just feel like you didn't hit the mark. I would say just send in what you have. If there are no time parameters like we were just going over with those commercial scripts, if they're just looking for you to narrate the snippet, maybe they didn't give you a whole lot of direction, but you recorded what you felt was right. And usually the first take is usually the right take, right? Your first instincts in what this should feel or sound like, send that in. Even if you listen back to it and you start to nitpick it to death, just don't even go back and listen to it. Just edit it, right? Make sure that there's no, extreme mouth clicks or take out the breaths and take out the retakes and that kind of thing. Just clean it up and then send it and be done. Don't second guess yourself to death and then just not submit an audition at all. Just send in what you sent or what you recorded. Just do it. Just do it. All right, let's move on to the comments and see if you guys have any questions about anything that I just went over. Oh, that was another thing I wanted to touch on. I think that was the thing in my periphery that was waving at me. As far as how do you know you're not being scammed? I think mainly with the whole AI thing and the fear of having your voice stolen or used for text to speech in a way that you're not permitting, or maybe they just keep in mind that anytime you make yourself available online or your voice is available, that could happen without your permission. It's just kind of the world we're living in today. But if you receive a script that has just sort of lists of just random words or phrases or just kind of nonsense, and it's not obviously for like language learning or educational for children. If it just seems very strange, if your intuition is telling you this is weird, this doesn't make any sense, then listen to that and skip it. Because what are they going to do with it? Your instincts are probably telling you not you don't want your voice involved with that, whatever it is. When it comes to audiobooks, the biggest red flag that I see is if the audition script is the back matter, and that's all it is, meaning it is, when you go to the bookstore and you pick up a book and then you flip over to the back and you start to read the back, that's where all of the information, sort of a snapshot of what this book is about, right? Maybe it talks about the author, maybe it talks about, other books in this series, so on and so forth. If the audition script is just back matter or something that could read like an advertisement or a marketing tool, then I would not read all of it. Read a portion of it, half of it, the middle of it, the end of it, not the entire thing. Because, I would love to think that everybody is trustworthy. I would love to believe that maybe someone just had the bright idea just to throw that in there because it was the easiest thing to cut and they had no nefarious plans for the usage of all of those auditions. But it's very probable that they could take one of your auditions with all of that back matter and then use it on social media without your permission. It's totally plausible. So if I have something like that, looks like it's the script in the entirety, and it could be used for marketing purposes in some way, shape, or form, unless it's for like a major casting site, like voices.com, Voice123. Like if it's ACX or Fiverr, Upwork, something like that, I won't read the entire thing. I'll leave some sections out just so it's not the entire thing that they wanted, right? So it makes it harder to use, essentially. Or the other thing you could do with ACX, if you have something like that, is to go to the listing in Amazon for the book. And there's usually like a look inside option where you can look inside the book, and there's usually a few pages available to you to kind of read through a portion of it. Go into the book that way, pick a section, and use that as your audition if recording the back matter makes you feel weird. Excuse me. I've done that before. I've done that a couple times instead of reading the script that could be used for marketing purposes. Anyway, let's open the door. It's getting hot in here. Getting dry.